Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kate Kite, the Continuing Education Coordinator for Illinois Heartland Library System, and you are joining us for our third Thursday Continuing Education program. If you are joining us through Zoom, please remember to mute yourself and rename yourself to your first name and last name, or your first name and library. We're usually pretty good at telling who is who from that information. So today we have joining us Christina Murphy and Lanie Kepler, I apologize, from the KASE Project, and they are going to tell us all how to get smart, being sensory minded and resource trained. So thank you again for joining us. Lanie and Christina, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. We were very nicely introduced. I am Lanie Kepler. I'm the executive director and co-founder of the KASE Project. I'm presenting today with a board member, Christina Murphy, and I will go ahead and let her introduce herself and give some of her credentials.
Good morning. My name is Christina Murphy, and I am a certified occupational therapy assistant and currently work in the school systems, but I've been in all over the place in about every setting. I am also a mother to three boys, a couple of which who are neurodivergent and have a diagnosis of autism or ADHD, different things. So I have a personal and professional stake in a lot of the things that we try to accomplish and do.
And like I said, I am Lanie Kepler. I have two kiddos. Case is actually the name of our organization is my son. He is 7 years old. We found, or I guess noticed when he was about 2 years old that he was regressing in certain areas and not retaining a lot of the things that he should be at 2. And we were diagnosed at 2.5. He entered ABA therapy. And we noticed through that process, especially during the pandemic, that there weren't a lot of resources in general for autism families, but especially in our area, which is we thought was a little bit crazy given that we live in a metropolitan area in the capital city. So we kind of decided to fill the gaps unofficially. And then we sort of made that into an official organization. We do, this is our kind of mission, but we are an organization that does a lot of different things, mainly because there are a lot of holes in our community that we kind of, Christina and I share a trait of nobody else is going to do it, so we better do it. We started with communication boards, which are just general boards that have words that any other kid would use on a playground. I want to swing. I'm too hot. I'm thirsty. I want to go home. We started putting those playground communication boards at local parks, at school districts, and that has kind of expanded into churches and museums and different things. We do adaptive sports. We've done soccer and basketball, baseball. We've also started some support groups for parents and siblings. So you'll see that on here, pals and sibs. And then this is our one of our newer ventures, the smart training. We started doing libraries has become our specialty. We like a good sensory story time, but we've also trained a lot of barbers and hairstylists in how to make their services more sensory friendly. So I'll go through a little bit of our training agenda. A lot of this stuff at the beginning, we will kind of not rush through, but we'll kind of go through the definitions of things a little quicker so that we can get to the library specific stuff at the end and give you guys some information that you can use moving forward and leave some time for questions. So what we'll do is we'll start with an introduction to what neurodivergence is. We'll go over the sensory systems and what they are, how they work. We'll talk a little bit about overstimulation, tips for success, these subtypes of sensory processing disorder, and then we'll move into tips for success, whether you're in the library. I have kids at home if you can't tell. We'll go over tips for the library and then give specific examples for sensory friendly story time and activities that you can implement into the library. So what we hope that you get out of today is an understanding of the sensory systems, being able to identify signs of overstimulation of patrons to the library. You know, if you see families at story time and you realize that, you know, maybe they would benefit from a sensory friendly story time, how to identify those things. We hope that you come away with a knowledge of sensory friendly solutions, not only the ones that we give you, but maybe giving you the power to kind of invent those and implement those yourselves. And then tools to implement that sensory friendly story time with those tools that you've learned. So I will hand this over to Christina, and I will say that if at any time you have a question, please feel free to put that in the chat box or interrupt us at any point. You won't offend us or hurt our feelings. We're here to answer questions, and if anything doesn't make sense at any point, please don't wait till the end to ask. We're happy to stop and explain anything.
So neurodivergent is a newer term that a lot of people have started using, and especially in medical communities and public spaces. It describes people whose brains develop or work differently for some reason. Um, that can mean that the person would have different strengths and struggles from those individuals who their brain has developed or works more typically. This is used to describe many different diagnoses along like a whole spectrum, and they're adding to it all the time. So it can be somebody that does have an autism spectrum diagnosis, ADHD, Down syndrome, sensory processing, social anxiety, Tourette syndrome, Williams syndrome, and any that is kind of falling in that in like the neurological kind of aspect. And they're always adding to, and they're finding that a lot of them can be kind of interrelated also. So when you are young, you are taught in school that you have 5 sensory systems. And so we'll touch on each of these and how what each of them kind of mean, and then expand on it a little bit more as we go. Because there actually is 3 more systems that we recognize now that you might not know a whole lot about unless you are kind of in that area. So proprioceptive or proprioception is when your sense of muscle and or joint movements, how you can kind of feel like how your body moves and where it is. Your vestibular system is your balance and orientation to where your body is in space in relation to other things and people around you. And interoceptive or interoception is your sense of your internal state and well-being of your organs and body processes and things that go on inside. So this all relates to what we define, what we call overstimulation. And it can happen when the sensory input is coming in too fast for your brain to process. And everybody has different, unique to them processing systems and speeds. So and how you interpret the sensory input. Some sensory input, your body can view it as more offensive. And so you require more time than others to process that information. And it can look like many different things to others around them, depending on the person. So, using different tools and strategies can help decrease the amount of input or help your body process the input coming in. So, then it can help with um, stopping a meltdown or shutdown before it happens, or slowing the process of becoming overstimulated.
Real quick before we move on, I'll just add that overstimulation can happen in neurotypical people as well. It just happens a lot faster in neurodivergent people who have sensory issues. A lot of neurodivergent people can't process sensory input as fast or as well as neurotypical people. So I always give an example of every mom I know, neurotypical or not, stands at the stove when they're cooking dinner and their kids are screaming and the microwave's going and the dryer's going. And if the refrigerator beeps one more time, you're going to lose it. That's overstimulation. And just different things that throughout your day that you get so much input that you can't differentiate, kind of like your fight or flight. That is overstimulation. So it's really important to understand that it's not just for neurodivergent people. Anybody can be overstimulated.
We've got a question real quick.
Like what would like?
Oh, go ahead and ask.
Oh, I was just wondering, what that overstimulation might look like if you're talking like if it's a child, could be an adult as well, but what might we encounter? Cause you say it can look like many different things depending on the person. Can you give us examples?
Yes. So it can look like you can see like a variety of ways. Sometimes a individual might go completely silent and stop responding. They might kind of like sometimes you can see them like almost like fold into themselves and like cover their head, cover their ears, trying to, in their way, decrease some of the input coming in. It could look like screaming or throwing something, maybe laying on the ground and thrashing or crying. Um, what some, it's a lot of people have difficulty, unless you are kind of around it often, determining what might be a meltdown from overstimulation or what others might interpret as like, oh, they're just having a tantrum. Because like, oh, maybe they're not getting their way, so they're having a tantrum, but it could actually be like there's too much coming in. So they just, and that's when that fight or flight kicks in. And so then you see the fight. And it can be hard to connect with somebody during those moments because a different part of their brain is actually shifted on. And so when you try to talk them through, the reasoning part of the brain isn't always online. So we usually will show you how, like, different tips that you can decrease the amount of stimulation coming in so that through different uh, techniques or offering tools so that they have access to these things and they can kind of self moderate and use these different tools provided so that they can avoid those situations.
I'll just add to that a couple of things. So it's not the same every time for even if one specific person. So if we relate this back to story time, you might have someone who, when they are overstimulated last week, they put their hood on and they crawled in a ball and they just didn't want anybody to touch them, look at them. They didn't want any sounds. They just completely shut down and wanted nothing to do with anybody. The next time that might look like falling on the floor, screaming. It might look like in the case of when my son was little, he got overstimulated by clothes a lot and he would just take them all off. So it just depends on honestly the day, what the overstimulation was, and the people in the room sometimes, can dictate what the meltdown or the overstimulation looks like. I'll also say that Christina mentioned kind of self-regulation. So in a neurotypical person, I mentioned like a mom standing at the stove making dinner, right? Like you have the self-regulation tools to walk in the next room, take a breath, come back in, turn off the stove fan or whatever it was that like pushed you over the edge. But in a neurodivergent person who maybe doesn't have those self-regulation tools, they don't have the awareness to walk away and take a breath. They just immediately go to that overstimulation, meltdown, whatever that looks like for them.
And it could also look like in a moment of overstimulation, maybe the individual tries to elope or leave the situation. In what you all are going to be doing there and offering at the libraries, typically, they're always going to have a caregiver that is present with them. And a lot of times the caregivers, making sure that they're aware too of these tools and the support and the understanding and grace from you all will make a huge difference. And just if you need something, please let us know. Or if you need something or when you need something, we have these things available that you can access and use. And a lot of times, the caregiver will know how to help somebody in that situation. So just making sure that they know that you have the stuff available, and just the understanding and awareness is the biggest thing. Does
Thank
that answer
you.
your question?
Yes, it does, and I'm sure at some point you're gonna talk about the tools, because that's the other thing I'm
Yes.
interested
Mhm.
in.
So a lot of times, to help kind of understand this a little bit and give you a visual that everybody knows, we use what is referred to as the Coke bottle analogy. So everybody starts with a bottle each day that has the correct amount of pressure. It's sealed, the correct amount of pressure, and this represents starting with like a regulated state in your body. Everything is good. It's moving along great. Each new sensory experience that you have can shake the bottle up, which increases the amount of pressure. And depending on how you interpret the sensory stimuli, it could either be a little shake or a big shake, depending on what it is. And throughout the day, if you take breaks or participate in some sort of activity or utilize tools and different things that help you to decrease the pressure in your body, decreasing the pressure in that bottle. So when you take breaks, it's kind of like when you open the lid of the bottle just a little bit and it releases pressure so that it doesn't explode, but then you seal it back up. If you keep shaking the bottle, you have all this sensory input coming in and you don't take breaks or utilize tools, then eventually the pressure will become too much and the bottle will explode. And that can represent somebody that has sensory difficulties of having a meltdown, or that fight or flight being triggered from too much, and it's overstimulation. So different tips for success for, we'll go through each of the sensory systems, and tips of how you can help with the environment, or tools, techniques, different things that you can offer that will help with each system, so that if somebody becomes overstimulated by that specific input, then it will help release the pressure and the tension a little bit. So the visual system, that's, how you, your ability to see, and everything like that. So things that could be a cause of overstimulation would be bright lights, flashing lights. The fluorescent overhead lighting is more powerful than like natural lighting, or if you, some places have where like you can turn it down. Bright and busy colors, a lot of decorations that can make an environment or a room look very visually busy. And that can, because then there's too much coming in at one time. So tips on how to help with to regulate that just a little bit, or help with the overstimulation. You can and you can have sunglasses, or the individual might bring sunglasses. You can maybe like suggest it. They could wear the sunglasses inside if the lighting is too bright or something like that, and it takes the it decreases it just a little bit, so that they can then continue on to participate. Turn down the lighting if you have adjustable lighting. And another thing is light covers, and we will show you a picture of those too in the with all of like the tools and different things. But there, and it depends on how your ceilings are set up and everything like that, or if it's even just in a specific room. But there, you might see them if you've been in a school. They're like blue, or sometimes at the doctor's offices they'll have them also, especially like pediatricians. But there'll be a thing with magnets that will be able to go like around the whole light, so it just decreases the intensity of it. And then having a safe space that is a little bit darker and lighting, or like a tent, or like an area in the corner where you just have like the lights turned down or turned off, so that somebody can take breaks in that darker space if they need to.
Before we move on to the next one, I'll just add to, for a lot of these, and we'll touch on this further on in the presentation, but not every neurodivergent person is going to have this problem, right? Like some, and it could vary by the hour or by the day. My son specifically, he doesn't necessarily like the bright overhead lights, but he will put his iPad right up to his eyeballs. Like he's fine with that kind of sensory stimulation. And he's fine, some days we go to the grocery store and that fluorescent lighting is just fine. And other days when his Coke bottle hasn't been released yet, that really bothers him. So keep in mind as we go through these that we're not asking, that you turn off the lights in the library and that you don't put anything colorful up and that everything has to be just like sensory deprivation, because a lot of times neurodivergent people and neurotypical people, they want the stimulation. They just, depending on the day, they might need that darker space. So just having these things available and knowing what to look for to offer these things is really what we're trying to get across. Not that we're wanting to overhaul the library and turn it into these, like brown, dark spaces, right? So we'll get into that about sensory seeking and sensory avoidance later, but I just want to keep in mind as we go through these next couple of slides that these are just tips that you can use as you see neurodivergent people in the library and knowing what to offer them.
Things that you can look out for, and offering, like, you seem like you might be like, the lights might be bothering you a little bit. We have this space over here, like this calm down area tent that's a little bit darker, if you want to go over there for a break, and then you can come back when you're ready. Just knowing, the awareness is one of the biggest things. So the auditory system is your ability to hear, and the input coming in and interpreting it. An overstimulation, that is things that can contribute to overstimulation, is too many sounds coming in at once. Similar to how Lanie explained, like when you're cooking dinner and you have there's so many things going on the stove, the kids are, talking, and mom, 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 maybe music's going too, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like if I hear one more thing, that I'm going to lose it. But difficulty with loud and unexpected sounds can cause a overstimulation or upset, and difficulty with persistent sounds. And it could be a loud, medium, or low level of a persistent sound that it's like somebody would sit there and like tap, 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 tap you, but it would, like,
Christina, can you hear us? I think Christina dropped out. Lanie?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out if I froze or if she did. I just sent her a text, so hopefully I'm wondering if maybe she turns off her camera, if that would help. I can kind of fill in a little bit here. So she was kind of talking about overstimulation with the persistent sounds. An example I like to use for this is like the refrigerator humming, or fluorescent lights that if you're really paying attention, they make that kind of like buzzing sound. A lot of neurodivergent people have a heightened sense of hearing, so they hear those things louder than we do, and also they lack the ability in some cases to differentiate the importance of those sounds. So as we might sit here, and right now I can hear my neighbor mowing the yard and my air conditioner is on, and my refrigerator is running, and my kids are watching TV, and I have the ability to kind of put those noises in the background while listening to you all and listening to Christina and paying attention here. Sometimes in neurodivergent people, they don't have the ability to do that. So they're hearing all of those things all at once, and they're all just as important in their brain. And that's what causes that overstimulation. Especially with those persistent sounds. Christina was talking about, like, if somebody's poking you constantly and saying, like, hey, mom, 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 dad, eventually you're like, what do you want? Right. And so if you have a persistent sound like that then you add other things to it, that can cause an overstimulation. So some tips for moving forward with those for auditory processing: having noise canceling headphones available. A lot of organizations and businesses will offer a kind of like a sensory friendly kit that might include some fidgets or some headphones, or like a pamphlet on all of the things that you offer that could help in these situations. Most of the time, I will say, if somebody has that auditory sensory processing issue, they will bring their own headphones. My son actually wears headphones all day, and unless he's sleeping, he has headphones on, because anything that is not his preferred sound is overwhelming to him. And that's another thing that we'll talk about later with sensory seeking and sensory avoidance, is he's fine if his TV is up to 25, but if his sister's TV or what she's watching is a little bit too loud, that will send him over the edge. So it's per person, it varies during the day, but it also varies a lot between what is acceptable and what is not. But giving warnings for possible loud sounds, especially when during a story time, if you're reading a story that has, like a bam or a boom or a zap, giving those warnings beforehand, saying like, hey, we're going to read a really noisy book today, or this book, Pete the Cat's a good example of having songs in the book. Just giving, even if it's on the registration or, on the event flyer, like, hey, this story has X, Y, and Z. Decreasing side conversations, especially in story times, if you can say, like, hey, if you need to answer the phone or have a conversation, like exit the room, and letting the story time be the only noise that's happening. I know that's difficult, especially with little kids and families. And we'll say this a lot too throughout the presentation, but usually, especially families with little kids, but probably even more so with older or adult neurodivergent people, they know what's going to be a problem for them or what's going to be an issue for them. And they've already thought ahead before coming to story time what the plan is. Like, if this is too much, we're going to do this. We've already brought the headphones, we've brought the weighted vest, we've brought all the things. But having these tools in your toolbox to be able to assist when you see something is important. Especially, you might get kids that maybe haven't been diagnosed yet and their parents are struggling, but now you're going to have the ability to kind of to see like, oh, maybe you want to go to our quieter space, or maybe you want to go to our darker space. And that's really what we're trying to get out of these tips for you. So moving on, I want to make sure, I can't see the chat while I'm sharing my screen, but I want to make sure there's not a question. I see the chat bubble, but I can't see what it says.
You don't have any questions at this time.
Okay. We'll move on to tactile. So like a lot of things, it's just the abundance of the sense, right? So it could be your clothes are itchy. We've all put on a sweater that we're like immediately, no, I'm not wearing this today. The tag is itchy. Maybe you have carpet squares that you're sitting on for story time, and it might be that rougher, shaggy carpet that might set off an overstimulation chain. They could not, like if you're making a craft and they don't like to be dirty or sticky, that could cause some issues. But also it's just a lot of things that sometimes you would have never thought. A good example of that, my mother-in-law cannot stand microfiber towels. She can't touch them. It sends her off the cliff. She can't handle them. So just things like that, again, we're not asking you to not do crafts or to not have the carpet squares, but just knowing that you might get a client or a patron to the library that comes in and they just cannot handle that, and offering an alternative or taking the thing out of their space. Something like clothing sensitivities, that's not something that would be in your control necessarily, but we talked about the Coke bottle analogy, recognizing that anybody who comes into your library, you don't know how much their Coke bottle has been shaken up that day and how many self-regulatory breaks they have given themselves. So just knowing that, you might have a kindergartner come in who's been at school all day and his tag's been itching the back of his neck all day, and he's hungry and he's hot, and he comes to story time and he touches the glue for your craft, and that's the end of his Coke bottle. It has exploded. And just recognizing that you may not have had anything to do with the events leading up to the meltdown, but knowing what to offer the parent in that situation, or if it's an adult, knowing what to offer. Hey, let's go wash our hands. We'll try a different craft. You don't want to sit on the carpet square. Let's try. Do you want to sit on a chair instead? Offering the different options and allowing the person who's having difficulties to interact in the story time at their own pace. So they maybe don't want to do the craft, but they're fine with watching it. Or maybe they only want to do part of the craft and they're fine with you helping the rest of the way. Another piece that we'll sort of talk about in a couple of slides, but asking first is really important. You don't want to, assume that the glue is the problem, because it might be the feel of the construction paper. So asking, like, if there's anything that you can do, or offering a solution instead of interjecting on your own is an important detail to this too. So olfactory is your sense of smell. You can get, you're smelling things all day long, whether it's offensive to you or not. Some sensitivities could be to perfumes or to, we've all had the coworker who has microwaved something they shouldn't have. We've all been kind of like, oh, like that teenage boy put too much Axe spray on this morning. Things like that can overstimulate you immediately, because smell is such a strong, sometimes unavoidable aspect to our lives. So really just being cognizant of you as a library staff, maybe not wearing overly scented perfumes or lotions, not having things like candles or incense or room sprays during those sensory friendly times, especially, but just something to keep in mind during all library hours, that, even if you're not neurodivergent, you might have sensitive smelling, I guess. So it's like you're trying to decrease the amount of offensive smells. Christina, I see you're back. We have gone through the last couple of slides, and I'll pause one more time for questions, but I don't think we've had too many.
Okay.
I'll let you take over from here if you want.
The gustatory system is your ability to taste and interpret the different flavors and everything from foods. You might not have you might not have anything to contribute to this per se, like with your different activities and things that you offer. However, it is good to be aware of that this is something that affects many people, and it could have affected them earlier in the day before they even made it to your library. It overstimulation could be from there's a lot of like picky eaters that maybe they like certain flavors or textures. They different like mixed textures could be an issue. Some people stick to like few safe foods, or they have to kind of like be around something or try it a few times before they even really will eat it, like fully eat it. But this could be something that very much has an effect on the individual's day before they even make it to your library. So being aware of this is a factor, or if you do anything where you have snacks or like, cooking classes with older adults or whatever, this could be something that would be affecting them, and just allowing them to explore the foods and textures at their own speed, and don't push them to engage with it or in eating it if they don't want to, but offering it just in case, if that's something that you do. So proprioception, this can be something that impacts during your different activities. Something that can contribute or trigger an overstimulation is an individual not liking to be hugged or touched, even like a light tap on the shoulder or something that they could interpret it differently. So that could startle them, or um, a light touch, they can sometimes interpret it as somebody like hitting them. It just varies. Not necessarily that, but like the they interpret it as different, the intensity. They could not like tight clothing. And it could be okay until all of a sudden, with all the other stimuli coming in and having to interpret everything, that uh, their clothes might be okay when they got there, but then all of a sudden they feel like they're being squeezed too much and they want to try to remove it, or maybe like take off their shoes or something like that. And just being aware that obviously you're not going to really have an effect on that, but that might be something that could overstimulate them. Um, Sometimes people are hypersensitive to pain. So they could interpret something like stubbing their toe as breaking a leg. Um, they might avoid activities like riding a bike or some sort of like movement-based thing that they don't necessarily have full control over, and might become easily motion sick. Allowing them to participate in the different activities and things at their pace, and often we will still um, provide or encourage activities that do have a proprioceptive component to slowly desensitize them to the type of input so that they can process it a little bit better. This might not be something that you really deal with much. The vestibular system is your balance and how your body moves, and an overstimulation, they might interpret the movement differently. They might be like gravitationally insecure. So sitting in different types of chairs or things, offering different types of seating, allowing them to engage at their comfort level and speed. And depending on like what activities you do at your library system and things like that, it could be a component to it. So just having a variety of options. Interoception, that's your interpreting your internal stasis of your body systems. Um, and you're not going to necessarily have anything to affect this, but being aware and offering support while they are figuring out what helps them and different things. It could be that maybe somebody is sitting and participating, and all of a sudden they realize that they're super hungry or thirsty, or um, so maybe they all like suddenly get very hangry because it was okay, and then all of a sudden it just hit them. But also needing the feeling of needing to use the bathroom. They might be sitting there and fine, and all of a sudden it hits them that they need to go to the bathroom, and it is an urgent issue. So they might jump up and take off because it took a little bit for their body to recognize it. And then by that point in time, it is close to too late. So this can also be maybe they take a while to interpret that they're cold or hot or different things like that. So just offering understanding and grace, and say, if you need something, let us know. So there's 3 subtypes of sensory processing disorder. So an individual can be under-responsive and often seen as like a bystander to some of the things going on around them. So they can be underreactive to sensory stimuli, and that means that they would require a large amount of sensory stimulus before they actually register it or process it. Um, and a large amount of stimuli can appear to as if it's a small amount to an individual or with low registration. So somebody with low registration, they could have a decrease interpretation of pain or hot or cold. And this could be like if somebody were to an under responsive person, maybe if they put their hand on like a hot stove or a hot something, or it could take a longer amount of time for them to actually register that it's hot. And by time that they register it and they remove their hand, they might have burned their hand. A decreased registration of pain could be like maybe somebody falls and um, and I've seen this before, maybe somebody falls and breaks their arm, but to them, they don't register that their arm is actually broken or they're like significantly injured. And so they keep carrying on, or maybe they just suddenly don't use that extremity or that part as much as they usually did. And then when you go to the doctor, they've actually broken it because they just don't register it the same way. Somebody that is over responsive often interprets the sensory stimulus as a larger amount than usual and will avoid engaging in that certain stimulus. And that could be like auditory or with foods and different things like movement. So a very small amount of sensory input is required before they become overstimulated. And their fight or flight can be triggered easily. And they would interpret like maybe if it's an auditory, where they avoid auditory, they could interpret a smaller, like a low level noise, what we would think is low level. It could be like somebody screaming in their ear. And an individual that is sensory seeking, they actively seek out that whatever sensory stimulation that they like. They seek it out and they can be seen as like craving it. They appear to never be able to get enough. And you could see this as somebody like that. Maybe they seek out the proprioceptive input. And so they're constantly like bouncing off the walls or bumping into things, crashing, because they're seeking that sensory information to be able to regulate their body and tell where it is.
Something I think is important about these 3 subcategories is that an individual can be all 3 of these for it, and this is why neurodivergence is so difficult to understand in some cases. But my son is a great example of this. So he has he's more of an avoider, and he has he's in this area for auditory. So he wears headphones a lot. He avoids a lot of loud noises unless it's a noise he likes. So he'll repeat the same YouTube clip over and over at full volume, but he avoids other noises. And if we go like to the seeker, he's very much a seeker when it comes to visual things. You know, he wants the bright lights and the colors, and you know, he'll get right up to the TV because he wants to see it as close as possible. But at the same time, he might be reacting negatively to how tight his clothes are fitting. So each one of these can affect a person at any time of the day in any of the senses. And it's not necessarily your responsibility, especially in the library, to understand any of this, but just having an awareness that anybody who comes into the library, neurotypical, neurodivergent, has a lot going on just in terms of like the sensory processing part of their body. And knowing that you have the tools to assist them if they need something from you. So we're not asking you to, you know, like understand, hey, this person that comes in, like they need to be spinning around in order to listen to things, right? And in a story time, somebody might be walking the perimeter of the room because that's how they pay attention. We're not asking you to necessarily understand that, but just offer assistance if needed and be open-minded to the ways that neurodivergent people who come into the library participate in certain things.
Yep, and it can also like it can change by day too. You can be seeking of an input one day, and the next day it could be the thing that sends you over the edge. Um, you can think of this like if you're ever driving in your car, and some days like you blare the music, you're really into it. And then other days, maybe if it has been a stressful day, you drive home in silence and just have a moment in the driveway in silence before you go inside, or wherever. Like, so that can be, and that's anybody. These things, and it's good to note, like you would be able to utilize these concepts with just about anybody that comes through your doors. It's not
I always,
specific just to neurodivergent.
right. And I always relate, especially the kind of day-to-day nature of it. When I was pregnant, one day I would want certain foods, and the next day that sounded nothing like it, nothing good to me. Like I did not even want to look at it, think about it. But the day before, it was all I could think about, and it's all I wanted to eat. You know, you have clothes that sometimes you put on your body and you're fine with, and then it might be too hot or humid the next day, and you put that same shirt on, and the fibers of it scratch your skin in the wrong way. So it's just a lot of how your body interpret things. And like we've said throughout this presentation, that's not necessarily unique to neurodivergent people. Neurodivergent people just have a different way of processing those sensory inputs.
And so every neurodivergent person, or person in general, their neurological threshold or capacity for for sensory input um, is different, and you can have a mixed threshold that varies by what system is affected. Um, you could see an individual stimming, in this is becoming more of a recognized phrase or concept. And it can consist of or look like a variety of movements or vocalizations a person with sensory differences might use to help regulate themselves. It could be somebody that is like flapping their hands, some rocking, humming, maybe just like fidgeting with their hair, fidgeting with different things in their hands, or like popping their knuckles or bouncing their leg while they're sitting there listening. It's something that they're doing to help their body regulate and be able to stay in the environment that they are currently in. It's important to note not to stop somebody from stimming. That is how they are trying to regulate themselves to be able to sit and to stay and listen for the story time or whatever. So they could, like Lanie had said, maybe they are, instead of sitting with the group, maybe they have to go to the back of the room or like over to the side, and they can spin or jump or rock or whatever, so that they are still participating at their level and can listen to what's going on, but they need that extra input.
I always like to relate a lot of what we're talking about back to neurodivergent people, just so that you can kind of get an understanding of what we're talking about, because a lot of what we're talking about isn't, like I said, unique to neurodivergent people. I'd be willing to bet right now that at least one of you is doodling while you're listening. To just as a mindless thing, you're doing something on your notepad that makes it easier for you to pay attention because you have an outlet somewhere else that's helping you regulate. You know, at least one of you is bouncing your knee under your desk. I think all of us on the call are old enough to remember having a phone, a landline, and twirling the cord in your finger while you're on the phone. All of that is considered stimming. We're just not told that that's what it is. You'd have just learned that yourself, that's how you regulate yourself in order to pay attention or to calm down. You know, if you're tapping your leg or whatever, if when you're nervous, if your knee starts going, you know, at the doctor's office or whatever, that's a stimming activity that anybody does. It's more prevalent in neurodivergent people because they're needing to regulate themselves more often and sometimes in a more noticeable way,
Mhm.
because they need their body to calm down, and that's the way that they're doing it. My son is a big spinner, so whenever he's excited or mad or whatever it is, he spins around in circles to kind of regulate himself. And a lot of people have an auditory stim, so it could be like Christina said, humming or repeating the same word sometimes is a stim. So it looks like a lot of different things, but it's also not unique to neurodivergent people. And once you realize some of the things that you do are stimming, you'll notice it a lot more in other people too.
Mhm. It's really just a sometimes a physical type outlet for the extra maybe nervous energy, or depending on the situation, or the extra like energy, the extra pressure in your body. So it's like releasing that Coke bottle a little bit so that you can sit there and listen. But is a lot of times though, like if you are stimming, like you can do it on a smaller scale. Um, so some different ways that you can use in your library to kind of help you with the neurodivergent population, to ask a person, and this is just in general anyways, but ask a person if it's okay before you touch them, to even like help guide them, like touching them on the shoulder or something, like to, oh, you know, you're looking for this, touch on the shoulder, come over here and I'll show you. That could be a little bit too much for somebody. Don't force eye contact. People can still be listening and understanding and paying attention, even if they aren't looking you in the eyes. And the eye contact and the force of like, look me in the eyes, eye contact, that could be enough to send somebody over the edge or make them uncomfortable, to where they can't stand that extra visual input. Um, Speaking to an individual in a normal, even level voice, keep, you know, not overly loud or overly excited or like boisterous intonations to your words. And this is important to note sometimes too with your story times. Often as you're reading things, you get excited with it and like exclamations, but and we're not saying don't do it at all, but you could if the individual knows ahead of time that the story will have some variations in the tone level and the sound level, then they can prepare themselves for it and be ready. So then it's okay. Allowing somebody to experience things at their comfort level. They might take more time to sit and observe their surroundings and the people in their surroundings, the activity, before they actually decide that they're comfortable enough to participate and take action in it also. Sometimes with our sports, we have kids that they come to the first whole season and they never participate. They sit and they watch and they see how everybody interacts. And then maybe the next season that they come, they're out there with everybody else. Or it could be just maybe the first 10 minutes of everything, or, half of the time, whatever. But we just kind of um, give them grace and say, hey, whatever you can do, that's perfect. There's no pressure or expectations to participate fully or do everything. Asking somebody if they would like assistance, if maybe they seem like they're overstimulated or just assistance in general, and just telling them when you're ready for help, let me know. And respecting their no whenever they say it, and kind of like stepping back some.
Well, my cursor, I was just getting ready to say it's not working, but then it worked too well. Before we move on to the next part, is going to be very specific to libraries, sensory-friendly story times. I want to pause and make sure there's not questions about any of the things we talked about. And it's a lot of information, and you will get the slides, and I think the presentation's being recorded, and you'll get access to all of our resources once you finish the training. But I want to make sure in real time that you don't have any questions. I'm not seeing any in the chat, so we'll move on, but please, like I said at the beginning, interrupt us at any time.
So some different things that can help to have a successful story time. Providing visuals or and/or hands-on material with your different books. This could be like if you're doing a book on like farm animals or different things, like maybe you have some little printouts or some little like animals that they can play with or look at while they are listening to the story also. A multi-sensory based play approach that can, whenever you're doing the book, kind of like just how I explained, you can have, by having like hands-on materials, you're bringing multiple sensory systems into the activity, and that can help them have a better understanding and a better engagement of and remembering kind of like what they're doing, the more systems that you bring in. Having a visual schedule of the events or the timeline posted, or like that, maybe like different printouts that they can, like if you have a printout that if they want it, they can take it, so that they know what to expect, what's coming, and kind of like a general how many things do they stay for, or how many things do they do, so it doesn't make the time too open-ended to them. A social story, you can have one of those linked on like your Storytime sign up page, or maybe social stories about visiting your library. And that is just kind of like pictures. And I think, do we have a social story on here?
I think
Or
we've
we
got,
have one.
we have a social story for our local library, but I was just getting ready to interject, Christina, that if you need assistance with creating any of this stuff, please reach out to us, and
Yes,
we're
we can
happy
help you with that.
to insert pictures of your library into a social story that we have that already exists. Or if you, going forward, if you have ideas that you want to run by us, or you need help with visuals or anything, please let us know. We're happy to assist with all of that.
Mhm.
Social stories are kind of the equivalent of, in the way I explain it, is the equivalent of looking up the menu of a restaurant before you go. So you so you're not, like put on the spot when you're asked what you want to eat. A lot of neurodivergent people want to know what the inside of the doctor's office looks like, or the library looks like, before they go, so that they know what they're getting into and it's not as overwhelming. So a lot of social stories for buildings themselves are like, I walk in the front door and then it shows what the front door looks like, and I greet the librarian and it shows a picture of the front desk, and it shows, what, where the cafe is, where the research
Mhm.
room is. So it's very simple, but it's just providing visuals of how
What
the
they might
building
actually
works.
encounter.
Yeah.
And like that could be, with that you can do like, okay, I go to story time, and it could just be like some kids sitting, the librarian in the front, like with a book or whatever. And I have these tools, if these different things, if I need it to help my body focus or whatever. So then it's kind of like an informational of letting them know what is there, what they might encounter, and what might be expected of them. Um, for a sensory friendly story time, a solely sensory friendly, you want to kind of keep registration numbers low, so that because sometimes with too many participants, too many kids, and then their caregivers that are with them too, that it might become very overwhelming, and uh, the overstimulation can occur. But also take into account like the size of the room that you are using, and that you can offer like a sensory friendly story time in different levels, to where maybe it is solely sensory friendly. You can offer a blended sensory friendly story time, to where you just say like, okay, it's maybe you increase your numbers a little bit, but you let the participants or people interested know that you have these supports available if they need it. So just having like the different sensory tools and stuff available for the story time will help, and it gives them an idea that you understand um, what they need, and that they are welcome at whatever. Um, Sometimes with using books with simple language, not overly wordy, that would require a longer time for them to maintain attention, or they might need more time to process the words, the auditory input too. So if it is overly wordy, then it could just be too much. But maybe they'll sit and they'll catch enough of it that they understand, or while they're walking in the back. Um, some libraries with their story times, they'll do like a related craft activity, and having two options or a plan to accommodate uh, to any tactile sensitivities with whatever mediums you use. So if it's a color cut glue, maybe having a way that they can use the glue or interact with the glue or the different stuff, so that if they don't like, if glue gets on their hand, having an option there ready for them. Glue sticks are great, but they would still have to like pick up the thing and glue it on. So glue could get on their fingertips. So maybe they don't want to do that. But you could have Q-tips so that they can hold on to that and put glue on, or having like wipes or paper towels right there so that if they do get glue on their hands, they have a way to immediately get it off if they want to. Using like paint and stuff, different ways that they can engage with the paint. And it can just kind of vary by person, by medium, and all of that. And then sometimes a related sensory activity or exploration type thing is beneficial too. That could be some sort of like a sensory bin that is related to the book and the theme that you presented. And a sensory bin could just be like usually it's just like a little tub, a clear tub with like some sort of tactile medium, like aquarium rocks, beans, kinetic sand, rice, whatever you choose to use, and then putting items into the medium base that relate to the book that you read. So as an example, we'll use Pete the Cat and his groovy buttons. Oftentimes a visual schedule, you can use like this: first, next, then, printable. And so it could be something that says like first, the story. So you could put like a little picture of the book. Next, like a song or the craft. And then it could be, that you're all done, you get to leave, like whatever activities you have printed. It could be a visual schedule or planned. It could be a visual schedule like that, or it could be something that says, just like a piece of paper that says 1, 2, 3, 4, and you have like a picture of the things. It's just dependent on how you want to present it. So with it, when you do Pete the Cat, like a hands-on component could be that maybe you have a printed out laminated little Pete with his yellow jacket on, and the kids, if they want to, or whoever wants, they can add the color Velcro buttons as you go through them, or they can sit and have the buttons and just like take them off and put them on and play with them during the story. So then it has a hands-on component and the auditory and the visual of the librarian reading the book to them. A sensory based activity, you could have some sort of a dry medium like rice that you have colored or dyed yellow or yellow slime, and put a bunch of different buttons into the medium so that they can kind of like play with the buttons in the bin. Sometimes people do songs. You can, by having the visual schedule and letting the participants know that a song is planned and coming, they can choose to stay or leave during the song, or they can sit with the group or maybe take themselves to the back of the room during the song, depending on what feels best to them. And sort of a hands-on activity, again, for like a craft for related to the book. You could have just like a yellow coat cut out, and they can decorate and add stickers as buttons, or if they don't like glue, or they can glue objects on as the buttons, or different just decoration in general of the coat if they are okay with glue. And then there's a link for just another craft that you can modify the instructions for different activities to where it is fewer steps in simpler language that's easy to follow. So different tools that would be beneficial in sensory kits as you build them would be fidgets, so that somebody can sit and have a fidget tool in their hands while they listen, and they can kind of like use it off and on, having a variety of them to available. So whatever the individual likes, yeah, different people like different things. So just having a variety is helpful. Um, Noise canceling headphones, and a weighted lap pad, so that maybe if they need that extra deep input, they can sit with the lap pad over their legs, or maybe on, I've even seen people put them on like their shoulders or something, or they can sit and have that extra deep pressure, that input, so then they can stay during the for whatever point, or maybe they, and people can switch off and use different things at different times too. The adjustable lighting, so that's a picture of like you'll see them in classrooms, doctors' offices, things like that, but the light covers that will help decrease the intensity of the like the fluorescent lighting in the room. And it kind of depends on how your library is built and the ceilings and things like that. So, but there's different things that you can look at for it. And having flexible seating available. So maybe if an individual can't just sit for a time period, and maybe they need to sit and wobble, sit and spin. There's the little green one you can like rock in. Um, the medium blue one, like you can spin and rock in that. And the one at the very bottom, there is like little, it's a dual side, and there's like taller little nubs and short little nubs that will provide like some sort of a tactile pressure, um, that if they want to sit on that air-filled thing, then they can kind of wobble some, but it gives them like the extra pressure from the little nub components. These are some different books and websites that you can look at if you want to understand a little bit more, research some more. We always have, and we can give you more ideas of things too. If you're looking for a greater understanding, or ideas of books to have available maybe in your library for people to check out, if they want to learn more about the topic or just use as a resource, we can provide you with with some ideas of things.
But this is sort of just the end of our presentation, so I want to pause again for questions, and then Christina and I can kind of give our final thoughts and resources and things like that. So I want to pause one more time for questions. Okay, this is just a quote that we like to end with, that the accessibility is not a checkbox. It's a mindset that can lead to a very powerful sense of inclusion. Christina has sort of mentioned this when we were talking about sensory friendly story times specifically. It's nice to offer sensory friendly story times where everybody in the room needs the sensory friendly aspect of it. But just knowing that your library is accommodating and understanding and willing to help, even when it's not a sensory friendly specific event, means more to neurodivergent families than I think most people realize. So even if it's not in your library's capability to offer that extra sensory friendly story time, opening up your traditional story time to kids who need that sensory friendly aspect, and just advertising that you're open to all abilities and are willing to help in any situation when it comes to neurodivergent people, is more, it sounds like common sense, but it's more than a lot of places do, which is why we offer this training. So if you are able to do the sensory friendly story time, maybe advertising that, you know, while this is specific to sensory friendly and it's set up a little bit different, you're always welcome to come to our traditional story time, and we're willing to work with you to customize that to your child or to your individual needs. The sensory friendly kit stuff that we just showed is something that we've seen some libraries put together as things that can be used during regular library times. It doesn't necessarily have to be during sensory friendly story time. But if somebody needs those noise canceling headphones just to sit and read a book, or if they need the weighted lap pad, it's just things that you can check out of the library while you're there. These resources on this page will be available to you on the KASE Project website. Once this training is over, I will email the organizers the password to our password protected page of resources for people who go through this training. And like I said, anybody who has questions or needs assistance in creating a sensory friendly story time, or visuals, or
Anything.
social stories, yeah, anything like that, please reach out
Communication
to us.
boards.
Yeah, we've got access to software that can create those things for you. And we've done a lot of them with our kids anyway, like just adapting things to help them. So we are full of ideas and are willing to research more for you, and also willing to put you in contact with other libraries who have already implemented things like this.
And one of the biggest things to remember too is just a lot of families might, like, if you put the information out there at first, you might not have a overwhelming response, but don't become disheartened because of it, thinking that, well, nobody's going to use it or show up or whatever. Um, a lot of families might be hesitant because um, they have received judgment in the community, and they have been burned before whenever they've tried to do things, and it didn't work out, or a place maybe said that they were understanding, accepting, inclusive, and then once they got there, it was they learned that it was not so. So don't, if you don't have a huge response, don't give up yet, because families might take more time to maybe get enough courage to attempt it, because more planning goes into going somewhere and participating in things than say like your everyday general family. And in providing the tools to participate in like your already available story times, and having the stuff to include them in it, that is a huge thing, because a lot of individuals and families, they just want to be included, um, and not necessarily like a separate sensory story time to where they are excluded from the general population with it. But if that's something that their child would need, um, to maybe participate in that first, and then work up to going to like other story times available with just the tools, like that is also a possibility too. So if you have any questions about anything, or how to present stuff, how to word things, how to make things. If, whenever, like later in the day or next week, if you think of something, do not hesitate to reach out to us.
Thank you so much, Christina and Lanie. That was so full of information. I know I learned a lot, not just about how, some people in my life, but also as a doodler and a fidgeter, I learned some things about myself. So I'm going to ask, we do have time for questions. If anybody would like to unmute and ask their question verbally, they are certainly welcome to do so. We have staff monitoring the chat if you would prefer to type a question, but I'm going to turn it over to the group for any last questions or thank yous or anything you would like to tell Christina or Lanie. Thank yous. We're getting some thank yous in the chat. And I'm sure there'll be some people that have questions afterwards. I know, like I said, it was a lot of great information. So I want to thank you so much for joining us this morning, and to everyone who attended. Yes, this was recorded, and I will be emailing through L2 all of the resources and the recording link. So thank you again, Christina and Lanie, for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having us.
And we are going to go ahead and stop the recording. What time is it?
11:27.
11:20.